vaults would flood, well, prevent the house from being damaged, leaving the fine house above dry. So near the river, that's why the park is below the road level. House on the end with the blue door on the left, Jane Austen stayed there with her brother, who'd overindulged himself and was treated where there's a small free exhibition. The Hetling pump room opposite the Thermae Spa tells you about the waters. This is the first terrace in England designed to look like a palace, 7 houses. Plaque in the middle says the architect lived there. That's incorrect. When they came here, they wanted to feel as though they lived in a palace. As we turn the corner, next to the Jane Austen Centre is a white door. Window to the right of it, that's a tiny wig powdering room where they dress their wigs with powder and grease. You might like to glance back at the palace, and I think you'll agree it isn't very palatial. You'll notice windows blocked up everywhere. Windows were a luxury, so they were taxed by the government. It's believed we get our expression daylight robbery from the window tax. None of the chimneys you see smoke anymore. If you burn any wood or coal here, you have to have a stove that burns cleanly. Look at the house on the right, and you'll see the damage pollution can do to the stone. These houses converted to shopping mainly in the 19th century. The railings are 18th century. The main industry of this region used to be the woolen trade. If you see any sheep with their lambs in the fields today, they're bred for meat. Great big sheep, Cotswold line sheep, were bred for wool. And we're coming up to Broad Street, which is in fact very narrow, and it was where the monks in the medieval times wove woolen cloth on broad looms. The road in front of you on the right. The next stop will be for the Jane Austen Centre. Jane Austen's aunt, Mrs. Lee Perrott, lived at number 1, the Paragon, just across the way. Arrested for shoplifting in Bath. Apparently a swatch of lace was found on her person. I'm sure Jane Austen believed she was guilty. She was sent to Warminster Jail and eventually acquitted. And Jane Austen's mother suggested that Jane and her sister go and stay in the jail with the aunt. Well, Jane Austen didn't like the aunt. The aunt was stingy. The house was always cold, and apparently there was never enough food to eat. Last year was the 300th year anniversary of the start of the Georgia period, and I just happened to find myself in the British Library, and they had an exhibition of books. And there was a little pamphlet produced for the jury for this trial, showing the outline of the shop in Bath Street. Really caught that story alive for me. Well, we're going up to the assembly rooms now, where they danced, drank tea, played cards. Coffee, chocolate tea, luxury drinks for wealthy people. Most ordinary people just drank weak beer. That was small beer. That was safer, much safer than drinking the water. The assembly rooms was where the Duchess, in 2009, filmed with Keira Knightley was made. The Duchess was Georgiana, Duchess of Devonshire. Her marriage was somewhat similar to Charles and Diana's, and the road where the assembly rooms was where her love rival Bess lived. I don't know if anyone's seen it. However, she was a gambling addict. Her debts at the end of her life, the equivalent of £4 million. Apparently the Duke of Devonshire just said, "Is that all?" Probably in a weak voice, I would have thought.
Yes, we do.
So this is where Bess lived. And on the right, flagpole and plaque, home of Arthur Phillip, first Governor of New South Wales, Australia. He's buried at Bathampton Church, just outside the city. Assembly rooms seriously damaged in World War II. If you go in there, tap the pillars, they're fiberglass, but you'd never know it. Colonnade, where the sedan chairman waited to be called. Before they were regulated, they would take you where you didn't want to go, throw you out of the chair and threaten you. It's where we get another expression, to be taken for a ride from, when you've been exploited. Well, here's the circus, no trees, entirely paved, first purpose-built circular road in the world. It has the same diameter as Stonehenge. 31 houses, same number of stones as around the edge of Stonehenge. Notice the ring of acorns running around the top, linking with Bladud and his pig, a legend the architect believed in, and a pagan fertility symbol. Look at the gaps between the chimneys. The houses are different sizes. Just going past the home of Nicolas Cage, Captain Corelli's mandolin. Well, it used to be. He recently sold it. Classical order of columns, Ionic, Doric, Corinthian. Over 500 carvings above the front doors. Symbols from the arts, sciences, secret society of Freemasons. In the middle of the circus, begun in 1754, was a cistern giving each house a pipe with its own cold water supply. Very modern, but made local people jealous. They dumped animals in their cistern to pollute the water. 6 months after the circus was begun, John Wood was dead. His son, John Wood the Younger, finished off the circus, this street, and planned to put a big house in front of us. But came up with a much better idea. Well, it may have been his father's, a crescent. And this is considered the most important of the 8 crescents. Number 1, you go through 11 rooms, which shows you how wealthy people lived at the time, where you see Georgian gentlemen. Running the length of the crescent, a wall with a ditch, which used to be much deeper. All this was common land where people grazed their cattle and sheep. They've excavated here, found a stretch of Roman road with a skeleton running alongside it. The Roman habit was to bury their dead alongside their roads. On the right, the kitchen in an 18th century house is below ground. Ground floor of the dining room, and in a sideboard or a cupboard would have been a pot for the gentleman to urinate in behind a screen. They thought nothing of doing that. You go upstairs to the withdrawing rooms where the family relaxed, then the bedrooms. If the servants stayed the night, they would have been in the roof space. They usually went home at the end of the day. Where you see the grass, they've excavated and found the foundations of Roman buildings. This stable block on the left houses the kitchen and restaurant for the 5-star Royal Crescent Hotel. Road on the right leads to where Charles Dickens stayed as a famous writer. If you keep looking right, on the back of the house, you'll see a black box which is listed, it can't be changed or removed. That's a 19th century hanging lavatory. When they invented toilets, they screwed them on the back of the houses. Glance right and look back, you'll see 3 more. They're a curiosity around the town. So this was the common land where people grazed their animals. Marlborough Terrace on the left. This is described as the most expensive windbreak in the world, built to shield the Royal Crescent from the chilly westerly winds. Little Princess Victoria opened this park in 1830, and it has a Green Flag Award for its amenities. The fun fair is here to celebrate Easter. They have champagne balloon flights over the city from this area in the warmer months, and they have a flower show, they have circuses. No performing animals though, they're not allowed here. On the left, the Botanical Gardens, it's always something nice to see. You may like to walk around later on. There's a lake, a very fine... 13, if you want to get on. And if you do, another bus will come along every 15. So there's Botanical Gardens over on the left there. Bath is not a very big city. It has a population of around 100,000. It has 2 universities, when the students here, the population is around 100,000, otherwise it's around 85. But it's going to get considerably bigger with the completion of the Western Riverside development, which you'll see in a minute. It isn't easy though to get building permission here because of the geology and World Heritage status. People work in leisure, tourism, light industry. Most of our hobby magazines are published from here. Bath used to have a strong connection with the printing trade, and huge cranes which went all over the world were manufactured here. But today there's no heavy industry. In the 18th century, it was really the start of the modern age, and I expect you notice the contrast in fashions between Mr. Darcy at the Jane Austen Centre and the Georgian gentleman outside number 1 Royal Crescent. By the end of the period, men were wearing the suit which is basically worn today with reveres and long trousers. That was designed by another fashionista, friend of the Prince Regent, Beau Brummel. Well, 1,000 years before the Romans, in the late Bronze Age, this region was inhabited by people who had a prince with a strange name, Bledud. His statue is in the Parade Gardens.
Yes.
A very fine park here. People spend the whole day with their children here in the summer holidays. Now, Bledud was legendary father of Shakespeare's King Lear and King of the Britons and founder of the settlement here, according to legend. That's the Western Riverside development in front of you. This legend, which the Woods passionately believed in, John Wood was probably, he certainly believed in God, but he had strange ideas about the Druids and the pagans. Explains why Bath is associated with healing waters. Very simply, it goes like this. I'm checking who's listening now, okay? I'm going to tell you a joke, which one of our drivers told me, and enjoy. Not a bad park, is it? Well, Bledud, as I say, legendary father of Shakespeare's King Lear, King of the Britons, sent to Athens in Greece, where he caught leprosy. Now, in those days, leprosy was considered, was a blanket term for a whole range of horrible skin disorders. When he came back to this region, he was banished from the royal court and made to look after pigs, swine. Over the course of time, his pigs developed his leprosy. One day he was on the edge of the town where there were springs, and the pigs began to wallow in the mud, splash in the water. Unable to herd them, he enticed them out of the spring water with acorns, their favourite food. Do you remember the acorns on the circus? Whereupon he noticed, well, here's the punchline, I think it's quite funny, the bacon was cured. Get it? So he bathed in the waters, he was cured. And actually the waters here, probably the sulphur would be quite good for skin conditions. The waters were always bathed in for rheumatic diseases, etc. It might interest you to know the Mineral Water Hospital, Royal National Hospital for Rheumatic Diseases, no longer uses the thermal waters. It just uses ordinary heated tap water, basically. Back in the 1970s, an amoeba was found in the water, and there was a bit of a scare. A teenager actually died. But the waters are perfectly safe now. It's treated. Very quite safe. Turning into the park, on the right, a very pretty bandstand with two little urns. Well, they're not little, they're quite big. booty from the Peninsular War. And on the left, Victoria's monument when she opened the park as a little girl. And now we have the Royal Crescent, the most important of the 8 crescents. 30 houses, 114 columns. In the middle is the hotel, doesn't need a large sign. The idea of living there, you felt as though you were in the countryside, but you lived in the town. To rent one of those houses for the season, the equivalent of £360,000. John Cleese, Monty Python's Flying Circus, he's got a property there. And Nicolas Cage, Captain Corelli's mandolin, not long ago sold number 7, the circus. Sheridan, the playwright, eloped with Elizabeth Linley from the Crescent and later fought a duel in London. Well, it was probably more of a barroom brawl, but anyway, he did fight in London. Now, in front of you, on the left, is the gravel walk connecting Queen Square to the Royal Crescent. Mentioned in Jane Austen's story Persuasion, and leading off is a Georgian garden. Townhouses in Bath generally have quite small gardens, but it's free if you're interested in that sort of thing. It's reputed to be haunted. Here we have 2 dueling grounds, one in front of the Royal Crescent and one here. Duels, upper-class men resolved their disputes by trying to shoot each other or kill each other with swords and pistols. You'd come to a dueling ground at dawn with a doctor and your seconds to make sure everything was done fairly. It was made illegal, but it did carry on. If you glance left, you'll see bay windows on the back of the houses. That's where the staircase would have been, enabling a sedan chair to come to your bedroom at 6 o'clock, 6:30 in the morning to take you down to bathe and drink when the water was cleanest. You do that for up to 2 hours before breakfast, by which time some men had swallowed 2 litres of the stuff, 4 pints every day. And then they'd wrap you up and carry you back to your holiday house and leave you to perspire. Just leaving the park, gravel walk on the left, and in front of you, just past the scaffolding on the right, this is where the servants would come to these 2 booths to arrange for a sedan chair, once licensed by Beaunash. They charged us 6pence in town, 6pence to go up the hill, and a shilling any further out. After bathing, they'll take you back to your holiday house, leave you to perspire, after which, if the weather was fine, you'd go to a pleasure gardens for a public breakfast. Muffins, hot chocolate, bread and butter, and a bath salt and biscuit. Made with yeast, invented by Dr. Oliver Glass. They're no longer made here, they're nice with cheese. After breakfast, everyone would parade, the ladies would shop, the men to the coffee houses to read the broadsheets, talk business, politics. People went to booksellers to write letters. But at midday, they all went to church, mostly to the Abbey. There were other chapels for well-to-do people. It was expected when you arrived, you would sign in at the pump rooms, but you didn't have to leave your name and address. And of course, going to church provided an opportunity to celebrity spot, as well as worship, and compare the ever-changing fashions. And then a large midday meal which went on for a very long time. The afternoon would be much the same as the morning. By the early evening, another meal, and then off to the theatres, the balls, the gaming tables, the concerts. But at 11 o'clock, at Beaunash's insistence, it all shut down. You were here ostensibly for your health. This is the main shopping street. On the right, Jolly's department store, founded in 1831, one of the world's first department stores. It's been refurbished. I particularly like this shop, but there's nothing in it for me. It's called Breezy. If you go in there, do wander around the entire shop. You'll get an idea of a Georgian house in there. On the left, Milson Place, designers, shops, restaurants, cafes, and
Jim
there's a
Rees
glass
was in there,
lift.
wasn't it?
Mineral Water Hospital in front of you,
That's probably a
built
street
for the
name.
poor, and it was a hospital in the modern sense of the word. It actually actively made people better. On the right, that shop was where Victoria bought a brooch. You'll see her royal crest on the roof, and the statue in the red niche was a present from Mary of Modena. She desperately needed to present James II with a little boy, a male heir, had fertility issues, came here, took the waters, lo and behold, had a baby son, the old pretender. People didn't believe she'd had the baby. They said it was smuggled in the bed in the warming pan. Mary Shelley wrote part of Frankenstein in this road. Now the owner of the mines, Ralph Allen, when he was only 27, cut out corruption in the postal service. That's why this post office has a museum, and also John Palmer invented the mail coach system. The shop on the left, painted pale blue, Cath Kidston, the world's very first post office. From there, the world's first postage stamp was issued, 4 days before anywhere else in Britain, the Victorian penny black, invented by Rowland Hill. As we turn the corner, we come to London Street. This road was congested with sedan chairs, carriages, horses, all trying to get through the tiny North Gate, which was demolished because of congestion. So congestion is not a new problem. Pub on the right, Saracen's Head, where Dickens stayed as a young reporter. Whilst here, he saw a coaching inn run by 2 men with the surname Pickwick. Pickwick happens to be a village 5 miles away, and he got ideas for Pickwick Papers in the city. Now Beau Nash, he came here and he